This is the Thriving Artist Podcast with Andrea Fleming, where we talk about how to go from surviving as an artist to thriving as an artist. Let's go. Hey, welcome back. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to follow, leave a review, like, add to your favorites. I don't know all the things for Spotify, but do all the things. Leave me feedback and feel free to let me know what you love about the episodes, what you would like to see and hear. Tell me you love me. I don't know. Give me all the feedback. I don't care. Listen, today we're talking about how to love your art and your voice. And the format of this episode is going to be very similar to the last episode, which is how to love auditions. Highly recommend that one if you didn't listen to it, because I don't know if you know this, but loving auditions makes it a lot easier to book jobs. Crazy, right? It really does. So go listen to that. And also, who doesn't want to just love something that's a necessary part of their job if you can, right? So that one's really good. This one, how to love your art and your voice. Grab your pen. Let's jump right in. It's very interactive. So take notes, do the exercises as you go. Or if you're one of those people who likes to listen first and then go back, totally fine. But I do recommend actually writing and doing the exercises at some point. It's so helpful. Okay, I'm going to start by sharing with you what I notice is in the experience of people who don't love their own art and voice. And I'm including a lot of personal experience here because I used to be one of those people. I used to hate my singing voice. I used to feel so judgmental of myself when it came to my acting, certain parts of my acting. There were certain things that I was super confident in, but certain things like comedic acting, for example, it actually wasn't until very recently, like in the show that I'm in now, that I have considered myself a comedic actor with the ability to do comedic work. But for a very long time, even before that, I just really hated doing comedy at all. I never loved doing it. I didn't like how I looked doing it. I didn't like how I sounded doing it. I thought I was very awkward and stupid. So let me share with you what you might be experiencing so that you can understand if this work is appropriate for you. Likely it is. I encourage you to just think about if this sparks any memories of experiences, even if I don't specifically say in detail what your experience is. Feel free to just go through and see if you can relate to this in any way, if this recalls some experiences for you. Okay, so what I notice is 4 main things that happens that you experience if you don't love your own art and your voice. And the number one thing that I notice, this is crazy, you actually don't put yourself out there, right? You hate how you sound, or you hate how you look, or you hate the work that you do. Let's say you're a visual artist and you paint. You don't love your paintings, so you actually don't even show them to people. And you don't share your work with people. You don't sell your art. You don't market yourself as an artist, and you just end up hiding. And can you guess that kind of leads to you not finding people that don't like your art and your voice. So you just create evidence that there's nobody out there to like your art, your voice and your art. The second top thing that I noticed is that even if you do put yourself out there, you have lots and lots of anxiety when you do it, or stress. So you go and let's say you're a singer, you show up at an audition and you like really worked hard to get yourself there, but you have these thoughts that I suck, or like my voice isn't beautiful, or like I can't sing, or my acting is terrible. I don't connect to pieces. I'm very awkward on stage, whatever those thoughts are. And you experience a lot of anxiety because of that. You actually end up just coming off as an anxious ball of stress, and you actually don't put your best work out there. So you don't put your strengths out there because you're self-sabotaging. And guess what? People who would love your strengths don't actually get to witness it. So you don't find the people who like your art and voice. You are highly critical of yourself, most likely, when you do put yourself out there, or when you make art. And you actually, because you're so critical of yourself, you're not looking for your strengths, and you don't embellish your strengths, and you don't build upon your strengths. So you're so critical, and you're just looking at the weaknesses, and you're just beating yourself up. And if you are quote unquote productive or in your practice sessions or in your work, you're mostly just focused on your weaknesses and how to make them better. And you actually aren't working on your strengths. And so what happens is you end up either sharing a weakened version of your strengths, or you don't share your strengths at all because you're so focused on proving that your weaknesses are good. Like, this is a common one with singers, right? Oh my gosh, how many singers do you know, or if you're a singer, how many times have you done this? You will go to an audition and you will pick the piece that has the highest notes possible, like the extremes of your range, and that show off the extremes of your style, like belting, like you pick a song that you belt the whole thing and at the top of your range, to try to show off that you can do it because you feel so insecure about it. Listen, I have definitely been there. That was like the first third of my career, maybe even the first 2/3 of my career, where I did that, where I felt so critical of myself that I didn't highlight my strengths. My strengths are actually my lower mid range, my chest voice, and all of like this warm, the lower tones in my voice. And singing quietly is actually my strength. Like, people told me all growing up that I should be a jazz singer because my softer tones are so sultry and like warm and comforting. And when I got to musical theater, I was like, I need to know how to belt as high as possible. And so I only did that. So nobody actually got to hear my strengths, the strengths of my voice, the beauty of what I do. But this happens for everybody. So if you don't sing, where is this showing up for you? How do you actually experience this when you're super critical of yourself and you're only focused on your weaknesses and you're trying to show off you're trying to prove that you can do what you feel the weakest at, and then you don't show off your strengths. The last thing I noticed is that when you don't love your own art and your voice, you end up disconnecting yourself from the people that you put yourself out there in front of. Did I say? I don't know if I said that clearly. When you put yourself out in front of people, you end up disconnecting from them. So how I experienced this was, I would go to auditions and I would hate my voice. And then I would walk into the audition room and I would not really, I would like say hi to the people, but I wouldn't really engage with them. So the difference is like walking in and being like, hi, how are you? Going straight and setting my book down, doing my piece, and then going, okay, bye. Versus, hey, how you doing today? Oh, I'm doing well. Like, it's such a beautiful day. And I'm going to just prep my music. Okay, cool. I'm going to be singing this for you today. Great. Let's do this. And then you leave the room, you go, thank you so much. This was so much fun. Hope you have a great day. Right? There's such a difference. Even if you don't use that many words, even if you go in and you just go, hey, how are you? That's different than, hi, how you doing? Right? It's a difference in energy when you're thinking that you hate your voice or don't love your voice versus when you do love your own art and your own voice. It changes how you connect with people. And can you guess, when you disconnect from people, you actually don't connect with the people who love your art and your voice. You don't actually find them because you aren't connecting with them, right? Even if you show up and someone would love your art and your voice, they don't feel connected to you spiritually, energetically, or whatever, however you look at it, as an artist, right? And this goes even a little deeper than just like interacting conversationally. Like, because you show up and you don't love your own art and your own voice, you aren't actually connected to your own art and your voice. And people can feel that disconnection. And then because they connect to your art and your voice through you, they are disconnected from your own art and your voice. I hope I'm explaining that clearly. But it's like, for instance, with singing, if I'm not connected to my voice, then I do things like I hide my strengths, like we talked about earlier. I am hesitant in my creativity. I'm hesitant in my choices. I'm hesitant in my vocalizing, or I'm like super pushy with my voice and I overdo things. And so people actually don't get to connect with the truth of what my voice is. They don't get to connect with the truth of my artistry and my choices and my acting and my storytelling. They don't even get to see it or experience it at all. So this goes a lot deeper than just walking in and having a conversation. That's part of it, but people don't actually get to connect with your artistry. So I want you to think about what else, if you experience any of those things, like really reflect on that. What has that been like for you, first of all? And what has the impact been? And then I also want you to think about what else you have experienced when you haven't liked your voice, or if you don't like your voice now, what have you experienced? Have you noticed that you show up and you do the audition and you end up like just absolutely hating the entire process, that happens too. Like you may even show up and you do a good job, but you just actually just hate the process. And it makes you dread even experiencing it again. So you pull back, right? So what else do you experience? Then I want you to think about, what is it that you're thinking that actually makes you dislike your art and your voice? Because usually that's what it is, right? We dislike our artistic expression because of something that we're thinking about it. And it could be something that we're thinking that other people are thinking, or it's just something that we actually believe about ourselves or our art. And I want to share with you the top 2 beliefs and thoughts that I notice, that I experience myself, and that I notice from clients and like other artists that I speak to. The number one thing is, it has to do with like the aesthetic, right? Thinking that our art or what we create or our voices or our playing or our movement is just ugly and bad, right? Aesthetically, it is just not pleasing at all. I used to think this big time about my singing voice. I thought my voice was so ugly. um, uh, when I started singing contemporary music, I was like, my voice is just so ugly. It doesn't sound the way that other people sound. I don't like this timbre. I don't like how it was just so icky to me. I didn't like it. And I thought that I was just bad at what I did. I was like, I'm bad at, my voice is bad. Like when I try to produce out, no matter how much I work on it, it just is bad. The other piece that can be connected to this, but not necessarily, has to do more so with our skill. Thinking thoughts like, I can't do this, I can't sing, actually is very common among singers who have insecurities. It's really strange. Like, you're a singer, but you're telling yourself you can't sing. That doesn't even make sense. Clearly you can sing because you are a singer. But sometimes it's super specific things like, I can't riff, I can't belt high. Or if you're not a singer, if you're an actor, I can't do comedy. That would mean, if you're a dancer, I can't kick my face, or I can't turn well. Or if you're a visual artist, well, honestly, I don't know much about visual arts, but I'm gonna try. If you're like, if you're a drawer or a painter, I can't shade. I'm not good at shading. I think I said that right. You will correct me, right? I don't know anything about visual arts. So those are the top 2 things. It's usually about the aesthetic of our art or our instrument, or our skills or our abilities. But it could be other things. What are some other thoughts that you have that make you feel like you don't like your art or your voice? And just notice these thoughts and the impact that they have on you. Notice how these thoughts or these reasons that you don't love your voice, that's what they are. They're thoughts that we have, but they're reasons that we don't like them, that we tell ourselves these are reasons. Notice how they make you feel when you think them. Like, what emotions come up? Really common ones that I had were insecurity, sadness, disappointment, anger, frustration, anxiety. Pretty much all of the bad emotions. Bad emotion, all of the negative emotions I felt at some point because I was thinking thoughts like this. And just notice what your impulses are when you feel those feelings and you're thinking those thoughts. What do you end up wanting to do, or what do you just happen to do when you are feeling that and you're in that state? What do you do in terms of practice? When you're practicing your instrument, or you're practicing your dance moves or singing or acting. And I don't know if painters practice, but maybe you practice. What do you do when you're practicing, or you're prepping for a show or something? What do you do when you're prepping for an audition? How do you show up when you go to your audition? How do you behave? What's your whole audition experience like, from when you walk in the holding room and you are meeting other actors or singers or instrumentalists? What's it like when you're in line to be seen? What's it like when you go in the room and you're interacting with your casting team or your creative team or your music director or your maestro, whatever? What's it like when you leave? How does it feel? How do you treat yourself? How do you talk to yourself when you're feeling this way? What happens to your performance? This is huge. I want you to notice not only how you behave in performance, but what happens in your body when you're performing. What happens with your choices when you're performing and you're feeling this way and you're thinking this way? I'll share some common things that I experienced when I was often feeling and thinking this way. If I would think, I can't sing or my voice is ugly, I would actually, in my practice sessions, it wouldn't be productive at all. I would be beating myself up. I'm not gonna lie, I would be cussing myself out. I would be cussing myself out, being mean to myself, zooming in on all of my flaws and weaknesses. I'm doing air quotes for those who are just listening because I have questions about flaws and weaknesses. I have a completely different perspective about that now that I've done a lot of this work. But I would be zooming in on all of those things that I needed to work on. And I would just hammer those things. And because I was hammering them, they actually wouldn't get better. It was really silly. I don't know how I did that for so long and thought that it was working. But anyway, I would hammer on those things. They wouldn't get better because I was hammering on them and I wasn't actually focused on them. And then I also wasn't improving my strengths and embellishing them and highlighting them and focusing on them. And because of that, I wouldn't show that off when I would go to audition or perform. When I would get to an audition holding room, I would be so in my head and so anxious that I wouldn't even be present in the holding room. If another actor wanted to speak to me, I would completely block them out. And I'm sure I came off as a complete bitch. And I'm so sorry to whoever I impacted because of that. And I would just be so in my head. And then I would be in line and I would be feeling myself getting tenser and tenser and tenser. And I would be second guessing my song choice or my monologue choice. And I would be going back and forth and changing my mind and going back and forth. Then I would walk in the room, and I gave this demonstration earlier, but I would just be like, hi, and then go straight to the piano. And then with the accompanist, I would not actually give a clear tempo if I was singing a song. I would be so in my head that I wouldn't feel the tempo in my body appropriately. So I'd give the wrong tempo, and I would be like, whisper sing my tempo and how the song goes. So they didn't really get a clear idea of the song. Then I would stand in front of the people and I wouldn't even look at them. I would look straight at my focus spot on the wall and avoid eye contact with them. And then I would just be a big ball of tension, and I would lose my ability to breathe properly. And so my diaphragm would be all tense, my abs would be all tense, and my larynx would be tense, my jaw would be tense, my tongue would be tense. And I would I would put all of my attention on the hard part of it. So I don't think I need to keep going, but you get it. I would basically sabotage myself, and I wouldn't do a good audition, and I wouldn't connect with people. And then I would leave the day feeling terrible about myself, and I would beat myself up the rest of the day. And then I would want to not go to any auditions. And some auditions I would cancel, but then for the ones that I didn't, I would just bring all of that extra energy that I just experienced into the next audition and remember how terrible I was and think that I was going to do that. And so I would just compound it. It would just be a whole hot mess, all from thinking my voice is bad and and my voice is ugly and I can't sing, right? From experiencing the anxiety of that and the stress and the insecurity around that, the way that I would show up would actually prove to me, it would actually prove my thought that I can't sing, that my voice is bad and ugly, that I can't do whatever. I can't do comedy, or I can't do monologues, or whatever I was thinking at the time. I would actually end up proving that to myself and making it true. And you might notice that, right? You might notice that the result that it creates for you is that you actually end up proving that thought true for yourself. So I want you to really expand on this part of the exercise where you look at how you show up and do just like I started to do on this podcast episode. I was giving you lots of details ad nauseum. Like I was giving you so many details. I could have actually sat there for another 20 minutes and given you details of how it affects me when I go into rehearsals or in performances when I think thoughts like this. I want you to think of every scenario and really get the impact of what happens to you, for you, and to your career and to your instrument and your relationship to your instrument and your art. When you're thinking thoughts like my voice or my art is bad or I can't do this. And I want you to notice notice that when you are in this place, I'm just trying to see how I want to frame this. It ultimately, and I actually did say this already, but I want to just say it again and emphasize it to bring it home, how it actually ends up creating the reality that you're trying to avoid. And it's actually, right, we're trying to make sure that we're the best artist possible. And that's why we want to think these thoughts. Usually that's what it is, right? We want to think these thoughts so we can get better, so we can improve, or so that we can avoid the disappointment and we want to correct for it. But it actually ends up creating the exact reality that we are trying to move away from, that we're trying to solve, that we're trying to avoid. Let that sink in, and you'll get it. Please do this exercise. You'll get it even more deeply if you go through your own personal scenarios in your own personal examples and really put in as much detail as possible. Now, you see what the impact of having those thoughts are. Now I want you to, just for a moment, give yourself a chance to imagine, take any of the thoughts or the reasons that you have. Just pick one for this one exercise. Like, I can't sing, if you're a singer. And that one is the one that has the most impact on you. And I want you to imagine it's actually the opposite of that. When I started doing this work, I used to have this, I don't need to go back into details. I used to have that experience, and I would get such terrible performance anxiety because I would think thoughts like that. And when my main thought was my voice is bad. And I would show up and it would just ruin my relationship with my experience, with my, oh my gosh, with my career. It would just ruin my relationship with my career. I was depressed for quite a while. But then when I started to experiment with thinking other thoughts, such as I have a voice, or I have sung before, or I've been hired to sing. Isn't that crazy? I was having this experience and I had been getting booked for jobs. I was actually getting hired to sing, and I still believe that I couldn't sing. It's bizarre. Anyways, I would think thoughts like that I knew were true. And what it did for me is it would allow me to imagine a reality outside of my voice is bad. It would allow me to experience a reality that wasn't, I can't sing. And because it allowed me to experience that reality, I got to have thoughts, have feelings, and have actions that did not align with creating the reality that I didn't want. Let me try to say that a different way. I had a chance to not be in the thought, my voice is bad, which created the reality that my voice is bad, right? And it proved that thought to me. And because I tried on other thoughts that were, to me, equally true at the time, like I have a voice or I've been hired to sing, it got me out of that way of thinking that my voice is bad and allowed me to experience feelings that weren't insecurity, anxiety, and all that stuff, and actions that weren't sabotaging my voice, sabotaging my auditions, focusing on all my weaknesses, right? It got me to experience actions that weren't all those things. And because of that, I got to experience a reality that wasn't my voice is bad. I'm going to pause, let that sink in. Because I experienced new thoughts, I got to experience a reality that wasn't the result, my voice is bad. So I had moments where, oh, I do that really well. Oh, I'm actually really, really good at quiet singing. Because I tried quiet singing, right? I wasn't zooming in on my weaknesses, so I tried other things. Or I got to experience, because I was not telling myself my voice is bad, and I was telling myself I have a voice. I just started playing in my practice sessions because I have a voice. There's nothing to qualify there. I have a voice and I'm just going to use it and just start making sounds. And because of that, I started playing more. So that created a different result for me other than my voice is bad, because I started finding things that I was good at. I started having more fun. I started experiencing, this is what's really awesome is I stopped trying to make myself better at all of my quote unquote weak points. And I started to do things like not belting as high as possible every single practice session, and instead singing songs that were lower in my range that just felt good to sing. And I created results like singing is fun, or I have fun singing. And I started creating results like singing can be playful. I play while I sing. I started creating results like I sing low really well. And because I started creating those results, it took me out of the old reality of my voice is bad and brought me into the reality of I have a voice and I sing and I have fun when I sing and I play when I sing, right? It created a whole new experience around singing for me. And because of that, it opened up the possibility for me to think, you know, I do these things really well. And actually, my voice sounds really good when I do this. Oh, and actually, my voice sounds so awesome when I sing this style of music. You see how that works? And because it opened that reality where I got to have new thoughts, I actually created an experience that proved to me that my voice is awesome over time, right? It didn't just happen overnight. But now I'm in a place where I'm like, holy shit, I have a really awesome instrument. And the timbre of my voice is so beautiful. Like I love the sound of my voice now because I changed how I interacted with my voice because I opened myself up to thinking differently about it. Okay. That's my experience. I want you to imagine for you what else could be true, right? Whatever that main thought is, whatever that main reason that you don't love your voice or your art or your moving or whatever it is, what else could be true for you? Maybe it's, I am a terrible, I'm trying to do visual arts. I'm so sorry. I'm bad at this. I hope you can translate. Let me do something I know more. I'm a terrible ballet dancer. I have no technique that's a really common one for dancers. If you don't grow up in the ballet world or you don't grow up in the Eurocentric style of dancing, let's say you are an Afro dancer or you are a street dancer or something like that. A lot of times when those dancers will come into musical theater, this doesn't happen with everybody, but this is very common. They'll say that they're not a dancer anymore because they can't do ballet. They don't have ballet technique or they don't have jazz technique. And that's like the common styles that are used in theater. So it makes sense why they could somehow fall into that trap. But they stop calling themselves a dancer because they don't have that technique. That happened to me, actually. Like I'm starting to finally play around with this idea after I worked so long on my mindset around my voice. Finally starting to open my mindset up around maybe I am a dancer and certain styles are just not my forte, and that's okay. But I can still call myself a dancer. Like I grew up and people always considered me a dancer growing up, but now I don't call myself a dancer because whatever. So what else could be true for you? Whatever. I go off on so many tangents. I'm so sorry. What else could be true? And when you're considering what else could be true for you, maybe it's, oh, that's why I went off on a tangent. Oh my gosh, so silly. Maybe you're trying to move away from the thought, I'm not a dancer or I can't dance. And you're considering, well, I actually, I do isolations really, really well, if that's your strength, right? Or I have been hired to dance, or I have danced. Something that's really, really accessible for you, that could be true for you. If that were your main thought when you went to auditions or you did rehearsals or performances, what do you think your experience would be like? How do you think you would feel in days leading up to an audition or a rehearsal period or a performance? What would your preparation be like? Like when you're practicing, or hell, even when you are in class or when you are about to walk out the door and you are just like getting your bag ready, what would your preparation be like? How would you feel on the day of your performance or audition or rehearsal? What would it be like in the waiting room? or the holding room. And when you would see other performers or other artists that do what you do, or your colleagues, what would you experience? What would you feel? What would you end up doing? How would you show up with the casting team or the creative team, or with your, I guess I said creative team, but it could be the maestro if you're an instrumentalist. When you're actually performing your audition, or you're performing in your rehearsal or on stage or in front of the camera, what's that experience like? When you're imagining what else is true and that's your main thought. And also when you're actually ending your performance or your audition and you're walking out of the room, or you're walking off stage, or you're walking off set, what do you do? How do you feel? Also, I want you to know what it's like for you when you see your colleagues or other artists as you're leaving the room, or as you're walking off set, or you're walking off stage. What's it like for you when you see your colleagues and other artists? And then let's say it's wrapped, right? You're wrapped for the day, you're going home, or you leave your morning audition. What's the rest of your day like? How do you treat yourself? What do you do? How do you interact with the people at home, your roommates or your partner or your mom and your dad or your siblings or whoever it is? How do you interact with the bus driver? It's very telling, actually, sometimes. um, what's it like for the rest of the week? I just want you to really, I'm giving you lots of specific questions, and a lot of them, right? Because I want you to really get the impact of it. I want you to really understand how it will impact you if you open your mind up to thinking something different. And just notice how it really it does. It shifts your world. It shifts your reality, right? When we hear people say thoughts create reality, we don't actually mean, at least I don't mean it when I say this, or when I've said it in the past. I don't really say it anymore because it can be a very confusing concept and it's easy to misinterpret. Thoughts create reality doesn't mean that you can, I'm looking at a brick outside. It doesn't mean I can turn that brick into putty. It doesn't mean that I can restructure a building with my mind or make people do things with my mind. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that I can imagine something. I imagine waking up on a beach in Bali and then I'm there. It doesn't mean that. What it means is you change your perspective and you change your emotional state, and you change how you show up, and you change your behavior. And because you change that, you actually live in a new result. You live in a new, I guess it's still analogous, but you live in a new world, kind of, right? Like you are experiencing a different life because you're thinking differently. So I really want you to expand on this exercise on both the old way of thinking that you're trying to change and the new way of thinking that you're trying to open yourself up to, what the impact of that is, how it makes you feel, how it makes you show up. Oops. Oh my gosh, that was a train. You probably didn't hear it because I have background noise turned off, but there was a horn or something that scared the heck out of me. Had a heart attack. Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, get the impact of it. All right, let's start wrapping this up because it's kind of long. We want to find alternative ways to think other than these thoughts that honestly are variations of I won't book, or not really I won't book, but people won't like my voice, or people, I guess that's what it is, and which ultimately kind of leads to I won't book, but not all the time. But they're kind of variations of people won't like my voice, or people won't like my art and my voice when you think about it. So when we get out of that way of thinking, we want to start to do that. We want to start finding alternative ways to think, and we want to start practicing those ways of thinking every day. So I'm going to offer some tips on that. And these are my top 4 tips. And I still practice these all the time. So I really want you to take them into consideration, because it makes it just so much easier to change your mindset. And otherwise you're going to be like, you're either going to not change the thought and you're going to trick yourself into thinking the same thought, but just a different way, or you're just going to end up frustrated because it's taking too long. This will just help it go faster and make sure that you're doing it properly. So top 4 tips. The alternative thoughts should actually be believable. So remember I said Pick one that is true. Like, what else is true? What do you already actually believe about your art and your voice that maybe isn't as terrible feeling? Right? Which is the next one. It actually should inspire you into the action that you want. That's 2. And 3 is it should make you feel a little bit better about your art and voice. Now, I don't mean that you should all of a sudden have this thought and you're feeling rainbows, daisies, and butterflies about singing or acting or whatever it is that you do. That's not what I mean. I mean, it should at least make you feel a little less terrible. Your second thought that you're practicing. You should go from maybe an anxious ball to maybe a hesitant ball. Right? I don't know if hesitant is more of an action, but you know what I mean. Like, you want to be a little bit closer on the spectrum to feeling amazing than you are to feeling bad when you pick this thought. And you should feel a little bit more inspired to take the action that serves you and the action that you want. Final tip is don't worry about getting the perfect thought. We just want to make sure that we're incrementally choosing better and better thoughts over time. What happens when you try to choose the perfect thought is that you spend so much time trying to choose the perfect thought that you aren't practicing, you don't actually believe it, and it doesn't inspire you, it doesn't make you feel anything, right? So you're just wasting time practicing a thought that doesn't do anything for you. So don't worry about getting the perfect thought. We're going to work up to the thought that you ultimately want to feel, like your goal thought, right? My goal thought was, I love my voice. My voice is awesome. I'm an amazing singer. Those are my goal thoughts when I first started, but I didn't try to force myself to believe that right away. It wouldn't have worked. And I would have just wasted time and I would have been mad. And I would have just ended up in the same position. So instead, I chose easy thoughts that were believable, that made me feel a little less bad. And I just practiced those until they became normal and my go-to thoughts that my brain just offered automatically. And then I tried a new thought that was a little bit better after that. Okay? I hope that this is helpful, but here's the thing. I actually know that this is super helpful when you actually do the work. What I actually hope is that you actually do the work. With this episode and the episode prior and the episode that comes after this, it's very interactive for a reason. I give you questions because I actually want you to answer them. I give you exercises because I actually want you to do them, because when you actually do them, it actually makes a change. So I hope that you do the work. Listen to this a couple times if you have to. What I would recommend is don't try to do a million thoughts at once. Work on one thought at a time. But once you have worked on that thought and you're getting a hang of it, feel free to go back on this exercise and do it with another thought in the same world. Like if you are noticing, oh, I have a thought, I can't sing, and I also have a thought, my voice is ugly. Just pick one for now, but go back and do this exercise again for the other thought once you have practiced the new thought long enough and you're starting to notice a change that happens automatically, right? It's just starting to become second nature. Okay, do the work. You are going to notice a difference. I promise you. And if you want to go deeper with this, I highly recommend do come and work with me. We go into stuff like this in every single session about all the topics that have to do with your career. And we work on changing your mindset over time so that you love your voice, you love your art, you love your career. And we apply it to things like finances. We apply it to things like building relationships in the industry. We apply it to things like business in your career. And it's super, super helpful. So come do this work with me. You can reach out to me on Instagram at TheAndreality. It's in the show notes as well. And just DM me. Honestly, my DMs are open. I love just talking to people about this stuff. Reach out, schedule a consultation. You can also go to the link tree in my bio. There is a little link that takes you to my calendar, so you can just schedule a call in a time that works for you. And let's get started on this work. Let's change how you relate to your career and have you feeling really good about it so that you can book more jobs and love doing it. Okay? Okay. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.